has been going on is born to stop there are these this is what look like. This is office the integration more so here. Where patient food to have another we're going to so pH segment on renal exercises. Review to attend we had influenza where the flu will kill by itself. It takes probably 6 months in a healthy individual for those birds